plan and coordinate. And oh, I think the little robot was talking to me. They're not any less work. So big congrats to you for putting this together for all your amazing clients, because you know, a lot goes into these kind of experiential virtual events. So kudos to you. I want to give a big shout out to Aphrodite Cooks. Vanessa is a very talented chef, very good friend of mine. Her and I kind of worked together on curating these boxes that you all received today. Her company, Aphrodite Cooks, is a cooking school, a cooking studio. I'm actually in the studio right now, so feel free to visit her website. Give her a follow on Instagram at Aphrodite Cooks. Vanessa is so talented, and we could not have done tonight without her incredible work. As you can see tonight, everything is just so well labeled and organized. I'm very, very impressed. Very great. And then the last shout out, obviously, to women everywhere and gender equality, because I'm an Italian boy raised by my nonna. My mother worked very long hours all the time. It's translated into my adult life. The most important people that I either work with or that mentor me, all women. So International Women's Day is a very special day for me because it just requires such a loud voice, not just today, but 365 days a year, every single year. So with all that, let's get cooking and let's get started.
What you really want is something that can come in.
Okay, so, I think I just lost that second camera. Sorry, one quick second. Just gonna put that second camera back on. You guys are gonna see a little request for that second camera to come back on.
Yeah, we'll let you in. And while you're doing that, I also just wanted to let everyone know that we're recording only the cooking portion of this Zoom. So please let me know. We're just sharing it with some of our clients who had work come up or were not able to be here for this portion and they wanted the recipe. But let me know if you have any concerns about that, or feel free to turn off your camera during the cooking portion.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I got a little, there's too many, this is very high tech. I've got buttons on both sides there. I've got burners all over the place. This is great. Okay, so we're gonna start cooking today. There are two dishes that we're gonna be doing. The first one is the appetizer. It's very on trend with the TikTok kids. Whipped ricotta toast with some blistered tomatoes. It's very simple, but I'm a true believer that the most amazing dishes come together simply on the plate. And it really starts with your ingredients, learning how to just kind of manipulate them in the right way, really bring out the flavor, but nothing should be difficult. So the first thing you're gonna do is you're just gonna kind of gather some of the ingredients that you're requiring for this portion of the recipe. So you're gonna have about a pint of cherry heirloom baby tomatoes there. You're gonna put those off to the side, but keep them close by. There's that beautiful Blackbird Bakery sourdough baguette, demi baguette, fantastic. Try not to eat it ahead of time. I know it's tough. Trust me, I'm on I gave up bread for Lent for good reason, because of it's taken a beating on me the last few months. So you're gonna need that. You're gonna have a container that says ricotta. So we're gonna make whipped ricotta cheese. So you're gonna need that. You're gonna grab 2 lemons. There is a container that says 4 cloves of confit garlic. So confit garlic is garlic that's basically been braised in a warm oil. It's been cooked ever so lightly over a longer period of time. It really brings out the sweetness and the nuttiness of the garlic. It makes it very pliable without burning it, which is very important. So you're gonna require that. There's another container that says olives. You're gonna need some olives. Now, obviously, olives are a very polarizing ingredient. If you're not a fan of olives, just omit. It's okay. I won't judge you, but trust me when I say it needs the olives, okay? From one polarizing ingredient to another, we have some beautiful anchovies. Anchovies are great because they give you that intense flavor, beautiful amount of salt, and it really extends the lingering positive flavor of most dishes. We're going to be making a Putanesca sauce with those blistered tomatoes. So anchovies, super important for that recipe. There's also a nice, beautiful shallot, which is in the onion family. You're going to require that. There is 2 containers of cream. Grab the one that says 2 ounces. We're not going to need the entire container for this recipe. Save most of it for the polenta that we'll be making later, but you're going to need some of the cream. There's a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Again, this is an optional ingredient. If you kind of like a more intense acidic level in this dish, I would say you can dip into that. Then there's a bag of fresh Italian parsley and a bag of fresh Italian basil. You're gonna need both of those. You won't need all of that. So whatever you don't use today is obviously still good for you to use at home tomorrow or the next day. But we're gonna use some of it today for both recipes. Okay, so time to start cooking. Now that you know what you're gonna be using, the first thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna grab a bowl. It can be any bowl. It can be a glass bowl, a metal bowl. I'm also gonna use a fork. And what's great about the fork is it's kind of a great, like, yes, you know what, we eat with the fork, but forks are also great kitchen gadgets as well because of their teeth. They're very dexterous. It allows you to kind of very softly bring out the flavor in certain ingredients. So I'm going to show you very quickly. You're going to grab your container of the confit garlic. You got 4 cloves of garlic there. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm Italian Canadian. Garlic is in my DNA, literally, as we've been sitting here talking. I can just feel garlic kind of coming through my pores. But if you feel like that's a little too much garlic for you, I will not judge. I promise you I will not judge. Feel free to use 1 clove, 2 cloves, whatever you want. But it's beautiful confit garlic. So you should be able to just put your fork right in that garlic and it should smash very easily. If you're ever making garlic mashed potatoes, this is a great addition to your garlic mashed potatoes. Instead of using raw garlic or cooking garlic and then incorporating it, just having a little jar of confit garlic in your fridge is fantastic. It's very simple. You just take garlic without any of the skin on the cloves. You're gonna get your oven to like 200 degrees Fahrenheit with some canola oil. You wanna make sure your garlic is submerged in the oil. Place it in the oven at 200 Fahrenheit. And when it's soft, it's ready to go. Turn it off, let it cool to room temperature. And because it's canola oil, it can go into the fridge. Now, you can use olive oil. The problem is olive oil will congeal in the fridge, right? So it'll become more of a paste. So that's why the canola oil is a little nicer. Then that garlic also flavors the oil simultaneously. So not only does it bring out the richness of the garlic flavor itself, the oil is also now taken on some of that flavorful properties. So as you can see, I have smashed my garlic into a paste, into this bowl. And now I'm gonna take my ricotta cheese and I'm gonna add the ricotta. It should just come right out of that container. And again, we're gonna use our fork just to mash that ricotta cheese. And you're gonna just mash that ricotta cheese and allow it to pick up all of that beautiful confit garlic. Okay, so it shouldn't be very difficult at all. Like I said, that garlic is really soft, which is exactly what you want. And the ricotta is basically a sponge. It just picks it all up. And please don't just call it ricotta. Don't butcher that. You know, it's ricotta cheese. I have a little bit of that heavy cream. I'm just going to give a little splash of heavy cream. Not a lot, just a little splash of heavy cream. And then go back in and reincorporate that cream into the ricotta cheese. Now, we're going to do that a few times, but it's always important to do it in a gradual step. Don't just dump it all in, because then it just creates a bit of a pool. You always want to add a little bit, incorporate it, add a little bit, incorporate it. Okay, so now one of my favorite ingredients to cook with, and everyone always asks, it's whenever someone says, "Oh, this is my friend Matt, he's a chef." 2 questions people always ask me: 1, what is your favorite thing to cook, Matt? And 2, what's the ingredient you can't live without? So, cheeseburgers are my favorite thing to cook. Fresh lemon is literally in almost 95% of the things I cook. Acidity, the freshness, the lemon flavor, it will make anything better. I can't remember the last time I had a dish that had fresh lemon in it and someone was like, "Oh no, that lemon just ruined it." No, it doesn't do that. It's meant to elevate whatever you use it. So I have a zester here. You can use a zester, you can use a microplane, you can use a cheese grater, but on the fine side, and you're just gonna zest that lemon right into the ricotta cheese. All that, believe it or not, some of the most intense lemon flavor actually comes from the peel itself, the rind, not the lemon. But I'm just gonna get all that beautiful flavor right into that ricotta cheese now. Amazing. So I did 1 lemon, and now I'm gonna do the second lemon. It's also really important to just give it a bang, give your zester a bang on the bowl, because so much of it will stay hidden, trapped up in that top compartment there. All right, so we're just giving it a nice little zest. Beautiful. Okay, now we are going to, again, I'm just gonna grab all that. Might go back in with some of that fresh lemon after, but again, we're just gonna go back in and incorporate, use that fork just to grab all that beautiful flavor into that ricotta cheese. Beautiful. Okay, now we're gonna switch gears to our shallot. Just put that bowl off to the side. I've already removed the ends of the shallot. Now all you're gonna do is you're gonna cut it down the middle, okay? And you're gonna remove the skin on both sides of the shallot. You don't have to use the whole shallot. I really love shallots. I find, or as Gordon Ramsay likes to say, shallots. I'm a big fan of them. You know, like they are one of the sweeter onion varieties. They really do add a great texture and intensity to the ricotta cheese, because ricotta is quite mild. So it is going to add a little bit more intensity to it. So all you're going to do, and you're going to probably want to look at camera 2 for this one, grab a knife and make a long slit, okay? But it's still connected at the end. So it basically looks like Pac-Man. All right, now, if you can get in there again, I'm gonna make another long slit underneath that first slit. And again, I'm gonna only go to the very end. So I've cut about 93% of that onion, but it's still connected at the end. Okay, I'm even gonna move this a little bit closer here, just so everyone can see. So it's cut, but not all the way through. And I've got 2 layers there. Then I'm gonna turn my onion 90 degrees, okay? And we're gonna do the exact same thing, but from the top of the onion. Some pieces might fall off, and that's totally fine. Now, again, we're gonna leave the end uncut. So I'm stopping about 95% of the way. And you're just gonna go, you'll see the lines, the divots right on top of the onion, and you're just gonna cut with that. Okay. Now, I'm just gonna change my knife up. I love to use a variety of knives while I cook. And again, sorry, remember that I said there was 2 questions that people always ask? There's a third question. Matt, what are some of your favorite gadgets in the kitchen? Well, let me tell you what some of my favorite gadgets in the kitchen are. A cast iron pan, which we're gonna use today, a digital meat probe thermometer, the best $8 you've ever spent, and a good selection of knives that think of knives as a tool. Every knife has a slightly different function. This one's great because it's a great chopping knife. This is my workhorse, my prep knife. It's also great for picking ingredients up and using it almost as a spatula, as a scooper simultaneously. Okay, so we've made the slits into the onion. Now, proper cutting technique, curl that thumb, curl those knuckles. It's gonna go on top of the onion. You never want to allow that thumb to go in front of your knuckles, or guess what? You're gonna lose a digit. So those knuckles are your saving grace. The other thing I love to coach people on when they're using their knife, especially when you're just starting out, do not take the front end of your knife off the board. Okay, so you wanna always keep that front end on the board. That'll ensure a controlled cut. If you're really good, you can just go to town. But people who do this and they just start cutting, guess what? You have 0 control. It sounds good. That's why a lot of people do it on like cooking shows. They're just like, da, 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 da. But again, there's 0 control that way. You're gonna wanna keep the front end of your blade on the board, and you wanna create a bit of a rocking motion, okay? I'm just gonna pull that down a little bit more so you can see that a little bit better. So you wanna do a little rocking motion. Another thing you wanna do too, and this is a restaurant chef tip, I've got a cutting board here. Underneath my cutting board, there's wet paper towel. That prevents your board from sliding when you're using it, okay? So often I'll see people use a really shiny cutting board. They'll put it on their counter, and guess what? You are, again, most likely to lose a digit if you haven't secured that board. So a wet paper towel ensures that board is not going anywhere. Okay, so now we can start cutting. And what's great is that hand, the knuckles, will help you determine how large those cuts on the onion are. And some of them will get away, and that's fine. We'll just go back and recut them. Again, the front end of my knife, not moving. And then really, as you're moving your knuckles back, you're cutting your onion, okay?
Just a quick question. There's a couple questions.
Of course. Yeah, go for it.
One of the questions was, do they put all the zest from the entire lemon?
Yeah, so I don't know if you noticed, but I was zesting my lemon right into the bowl, okay? I used pretty much both lemons. You can use one lemon, you can use 2 lemons, and someone just asked about cream. Again, I just used about 1 teaspoon of what we were given, because you have 2 containers of cream. I've just used a little bit. I'm going to incorporate a little bit more in, but I haven't even used half of that jar yet.
And there was one question here. How do you do shallot?
How do I do shallot? Like cut it?
The question is, how do you do? Maybe this is the part that you're doing now, right? This is shallot.
This is literally what we're doing is the prep on the shallot. You know what? I will demo it again on that second half, because my shallot was quite large. For the amount of ricotta cheese I have, I'm not going to do both halves, but I will demo that cut again. That way we can learn how to do shallot. And awesome. So we have the shallot here, the one that I finally chopped. That's just going to go right in. Beautiful. Okay, and then again, we're going to just use that fork, incorporate that, all those ingredients together. I'm going to go back to my cream, and add another little splash of cream. The cream just allows it to kind of combine all those fats together. It's more of a paste now, which is what we want. Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm going to grab a little bit of salt. Just a little pinch of salt in here. Add a little salt to the bowl. I use less than half a teaspoon there. I literally just gave it a little hit. We're going to salt at a few stages, so you don't need to over salt the ricotta cheese. Okay, so now you can see it's a much smoother paste. I've used about 3/4 of that cream. And now I'm just actually finishing off that cream. So that whole first container of cream, the one that says 2 ounces on it, I have used. And that ricotta cheese has just absorbed it all. A couple little things we're going to add to this. And then I'm going to show you that shallot one more time. Okay, a little piece got away. Okay, so I'm just going to put that bowl off to the side. I'm going to grab, I don't know, about 6 basil leaves. And you'll notice in my style of cooking, I'm a big believer that no one should ever tell you there's one way to do something. I'm a believer that it's got to just feel right for you. So I'll never say you must use 6 basil leaves. I'll suggest I'm going to use 6 basil leaves. If you want to use 10, knock yourself out. You want to use 2, again, I can't stop you. It's this is your party and I'm just your +1. Okay, so now this technique with your knife is called a chiffonade. Really what we're going to do is get this basil really finely chopped. So you can take those 6 leaves, I've cut them in half, and then I've kind of rolled it into a ball. So you can see here, I've got a ball of basil, not to be mistaken by a ball of basile behind the cutting board here. Got a ball of basil. And again, same technique with the shallot. I've got my thumb back, knuckles out, and we're going to give this a really fine chop. And it's very almost like hair now, as far as like how fine it's been cut. That is referred to as a chiffonade. So you'll see it's very fine now. That is referred to as a chiffonade. Now I'm going to take all that fresh basil, throw it into my whipped ricotta, and I'm going to blend that all together. And it's really starting to come together now. Very happy with that. And it should be like a nice, beautiful paste. I'm going to go back in, just give it a little bit more salt. You also have some chili flakes here as well. It's meant for the broccolini dish in the second course, but you don't need all of that. And if you like spice, I highly suggest you take your dried chili flakes, you add it to the ricotta as well, and you incorporate it. You don't need to, again, so if you're wondering what I just did there, if you don't like spice, don't worry about it. Those are one of those ingredients that are there. If you enjoy spice, that's what I would do. If you don't want to use dried chili flakes and you have like a nice like calabrese chili oil, that's really beautiful too. But just keep in mind, an oil will obviously make that even the ricotta even wetter, which is totally fine. It'll just be a looser paste versus what you have right now. Someone asked earlier about what to do with the shallot. So I'm going to show you that cut again, just in case you missed it the first time. Okay, so we have half a shallot here. Okay, I'm going to point it towards you. So if you're look on camera too, that'll be the best way to see what I'm doing. I've got a nice sharp knife here. Okay, and I'm going to give a slit on the top of the onion, just like so. But I'm going to stop with about 2% left of the onion. So the back of the onion here. So if you open it, it's like Pac-Man, like I was saying earlier. It's like a mouth. Okay, I'm going to just go back and directly underneath that slit, I'm going to do a second slit. And again, I'm going to stop it right at the very end. So it's like it has two mouths, one on top of the other. Okay, so now I'm going to take my knife again. I'm going to turn the onion towards me. And I'm going to make slits on top of the onion with those lines. Again, not cutting the whole onion, but leaving about 2% of that back intact. So still, the whole onion is still intact at the back here. And what that allows is when you're making the chop now, for the pieces not to go everywhere. And like, listen, you're going to get little fragments of onion falling off. And that's totally okay. But you want, for the most part, still intact and ready to go. And now for the actual chop, I had mentioned earlier, make sure the front end of your knife is connected to the board. I'm going to do practice a rocking kind of motion. Don't do this, you will lose a digit, I promise you. So more of a rocking kind of motion. Thumb and knuckles on top of the onion. That's going to protect not only your fingers, but it's also going to help you determine how large those cuts are. And we want them nice and small. If anyone here likes oysters, this is how you make an onion mignonette. This would be the cut that you would do to make a mignonette. So you would take these finely chopped shallots and some garlic, and then you would just add it to apple cider vinegar. So you just move the knuckles back and you get a nice fine cut. Now, I'm not going to use that extra half onion. I've already got half a shallot in there. That is more than enough for me, but I just wanted to go ahead and show you that cut one more time. Okay, so we have our whipped ricotta. I'm just going to put this off to the side for right now. We're good on it for right this moment. Now we're going to get the rest of our dish ready to go. So you're going to want to grab your baby heirloom tomatoes. You're going to want to grab your olives. You're going to want to grab your anchovies. Bring back one of those lemons or both, up to you. I've got some fresh Italian parsley. Again, how much, Matt? Well, how about this much? We'll use this much. Okay, this much. Amazing. We'll need some salt. Balsamic vinegar is optional, so you don't have to use the balsamic. And I'm going to use, there's a bag there with about 8 cloves of raw garlic. I'm going to grab, call it 2 cloves of that raw garlic as well. Okay, so then in addition to that, you'll see a bottle here. That bottle is some olive oil. You don't need all of this olive oil, but you're going to need some of this olive oil. No anchovies for vegetarian. Is there a suggestion? Yeah, so if you don't, if you're a vegetarian that also does not eat fish, but you're looking for something to give you that brininess in the Putanesca sauce, you already have the olives, and olives technically also give you that brininess. Capers are also a great substitution. So whenever I have to make like a vegan Caesar dressing, I will use capers instead of anchovies, because capers will give you that same hit of salt. It's a very definitive taste. There's a little bit of that brine juice that can go in it as well. So capers are a great alternative, but not necessary. So, and then the other thing you're going to want to do is grab some sort of pan. I'm going to use a stainless steel pan here, something that will allow me to get a nice char off of my tomatoes. Now you can also go, I'm going to cook my tomatoes whole because I want to see them blister in the pan. And when I say blister, you will literally see the skin on the tomatoes start to pop. And that's just the sweetness coming out. And that's what I want. I don't want to cook this into a sauce. So I find that if you do cut the tomatoes in half, you will notice them not get that same blistered explosive sweetness, and it'll kind of, all the liquid will cook out of the tomato and it'll kind of create a bit more of a sauce for you. So not my personal preference, but that doesn't mean, again, you can't do it. I'm going to start off now with the raw garlic. I'm just going to give it a nice little smash. So I got 2 cloves of raw garlic here and a second smash as well. And now same technique as the shallot. I'm going to grab the knife. My knuckles are guiding the cut all the way to the end, okay? And then I'm just going to knock it off my knife. And then same thing. The front end of my blade does not leave the cutting board. Beautiful, beautiful, amazing. Okay, so the garlic is chopped. Now to grab your olives. So some of the olives are already pitted. Some of them, the green olives, still have pits in them. So all we're going to do is you're going to just squeeze the meat or the flesh of the olive off the pit. And it's okay that it's all crushed up. Just very easily use your hands and crush that olive, get all that beautiful olive flavor off the pit. That's all going to go in. Awesome. So my jar had 4 of these green olives. Amazing. Okay, and then I have my Kalamata olives here as well. I'm a big fan of olives. I feel like you're either on team olive or you're not on team olive. There's no in between, and I will not judge. Similar to the garlic, I'm going to just smash these olives. Give them a nice little press so they're flat. Okay, beautiful. And then I'm just going to come here, just give them a rough chop. I don't want them as pulverized as my shallots or my garlic. I want them to still be meaty. Okay, and now the last thing we're going to grab before we start to cook this dish is the anchovies. I've got all the anchovies on the cutting board. And this is like pretty basic combination for doing any Putanesca sauce. So if you were going to do this with a plate of linguine pasta with some seafood, for example, this is exactly what you would use as well. So I have my anchovies here, and I'm just going to use that same technique, and I'm going to finely chop them. Now, I'm a big fan of anchovies, so I'm going to use all 4. Again, like I've said earlier, if you want to just use 1, go to town. I absolutely love anchovies. I find they bring such a uniqueness to whatever you cook with them. So that's why I use all 4 there. A little bit of olive oil and the pan. So let's get the pan on first. Burners up.
Chef
switch burners
Matt,
up.
Chef
Yes.
Matt, what's the heat on the pan at?
So you're gonna put your pan to a high temperature right now.
High temp.
Okay.
Also, Chef
High
Matt, just
temp.
to mention, it's my birthday. It's Sammy V.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday! We'll do a
Thank
big song at the end of this.
For sure. Just thought I'd mention it, but yeah, high heat, great. Thank you.
High heat on the pan, by the way, it's your birthday. That was very subtle. I love that. That was amazing. I'm a big fan of getting your pan warm and then incorporating the oil, especially with olive oil. This is a lighter olive oil. It's why it's yellow instead of green. Olive oil has a lower smoke point, which means you're more likely to burn it, but you still need a hot pan. So the way around that is get your pan hot first and then add your oil to the pan. Some people add their oil to the pan while it's cold, then turn it on a high heat. Well, now you're bringing the oil's temperature up at a raging heat with your pan, and it is more likely to burn that way. So this way, what we're doing is we're ensuring that the pan is hot first. We're gonna add a little bit of olive oil. And by little bit, I'm using about a quarter, not even, of that bowl of olive oil we received. I'm just gonna move it around. And basically, you know your pan is hot when your oil moves freely. You should be able to see it, not smoke on you, but there should be a little bit of steam rising up from the oil, which I think is super important. I'm gonna grab my tomatoes, my jar of tomatoes, that's gonna go in first. And the tomatoes are gonna start to cook immediately. And you'll start to hear them pop and make this beautiful kind of dancing noise in the oil. That's what I like to hear and see. Just give them a nice shake. This is an industry term. It's called shaking the pan. So it's like when you don't know what to do in a kitchen, just to look busy, you just shake the pan. So if a young chef would come talk to me while I'm working, I would just, sorry guys, I'm busy. I'm shaking the pan. Like, come on. What do you see me shaking the pan? So to any of the moms or dads like cooking at home and the kids are driving you nuts and you just want to avoid them all, guys, shaking the pan. Come on. Pans. Give me some space. So immediately you will see your tomatoes start to change color on you, the skin start to open up. That's what we are referring to as blistering the tomatoes. Once we get that, we're gonna get our garlic and our olives, and we're just gonna throw that all in there. And the anchovies, all of it. Get it all in there. Now, once you add your garlic, you're gonna wanna turn your temperature on the pan down. The reason being, garlic burns really quickly. So now I've turned the temperature on that right down. And again, back to shaking those pans. Shaking those pans. Okay, so now I've got my Italian parsley, and it's otherwise known as flat leaf parsley. Just giving that a rough chop, and that's going to go in as well. It is very similar in flavor to curly parsley that's used often in Mediterranean cooking. Middle Eastern cooking, but I find this one a little less intense. Okay, then you're just gonna give that a mix, and like, what an intense flavor. There's only like 4 things here, but my goodness, does that ever smell fantastic. We've got the raw garlic, we've got the blistered tomatoes, we've got some olive oil, the olives with the anchovies, a little bit of that Italian parsley. Now I'm gonna take one of those lemons that I zested. I've also got a bit of a strainer here, and you're just gonna come over top of your pan and throw some beautiful fresh lemon juice right in there. Again, this is so nice on a pasta, so we're using it for the toast, but if you wanted to use this exact same sauce another way, you easily could. Okay. Beautiful. So now I've got a spoon here. I'm just going to gather up all this goodness. The tomatoes are soft, but they're not mushy. There's still a firmness to them. If you want yours a little softer, by all means, go for it. But I want mine to have a little bit of texture. And I'm grabbing all that great flavor out of my pan, the olives, the anchovies, the parsley, the tomatoes. But there's still a lot of good stuff in the bottom of that pan. And one thing my nonna taught me while cooking was nothing goes to waste, okay? Nothing, not a thing. So we got some olive oil in that pan. We've got still some of that. I can smell the anchovies, and I can smell the olive juice in there. I'm gonna take my little demi-baguette. I've got a bread knife, so any serrated knife. I'm gonna give that a cut just like it's a sandwich, lengthwise. Keep in mind, this is on low heat still, nice low heat. I'm just gonna put my bread right in that oil. I want that bread to soak up all of that amazing flavor. And while the bread is doing that, I am gonna grab a plate and we are gonna start to plate this beautiful appetizer. Now I've cut this into 2 long, almost sub-like slices. You can cut them into little crostinis. You can cut them the way I've done here, but then You can cut these portions in half as well. It's really whatever you like. For purposes of presentation, I'm going to keep them whole like that. And then once you've gotten a nice little cook on one side, just like sun tanning, make sure you flip the pan, flip the bread, get it on the other side as well. Like I said, there's so much goodness at the bottom of that pan. Nothing should go to waste. And sourdough bread, in my opinion, is the perfect bread for something like this. It's got that beautiful fermented age to it. It's very crusty, so it can hold up and withstand all those beautiful ingredients that we're going to be putting on and layering onto this. It's such a mature piece of bread, and I love bread. If you can't tell, I've given up bread for Lent, and I miss it ever so much. But the smell of this bread for me is life right now. So I'm just going to flip that around one more time just to make sure it's soaking up everything. I'm going to just quickly put it back on high heat just for 2 seconds. Okay. So what this is doing too is it's also softening the bread up a bit. So you can't even go in, you can tackle this with a knife and fork. Okay, so I've got these beautiful pieces of bread. Again, if you can't tell that I miss bread, just hear me talk about it. Let me tell you how much I miss bread. Okay, so the bread is on the plate now. I've got a nice little plate here going. Just gonna move that hot pan out of the way. Okay, we're gonna go back to our ricotta cheese that we made earlier, okay? A nice little dollop. It's gonna go right on top. I'm just gonna kind of just gradually spread it over the bread. You can use as much or as little as you like. All right, so I've got that beautiful whipped ricotta cheese. Now you could have just done this with just plain old ricotta without adding all that great flavor that we did. The only thing is ricotta on its own, not that much flavor going on. So what's great about it is a sponge for amazing things. And that is why we added all that, the shallots and the confit garlic. Okay, so the toast is
Hey,
now
Matt,
got,
just an FYI, it looks like in the chat box, a few of us are a little bit behind on you, just so you're aware.
no problem. I will slow right down.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going at an okay pace, though. No, I had to think about this today because, like, you know, I do this every day. So for me, this is like pretty much, I am moving so slow as far as I'm concerned. I would have been done this 13 minutes ago, but I will continue to slow this down for you to ensure that you are not missing any steps. And by all means, you know, you're just probably, if you are catching up, you're probably just waiting for your tomatoes to kind of get a little softer to your preference. You're not missing anything right now. We're just building it. So to this point, we've got that beautiful sourdough bread. I used the demi baguettes here. Like I said, I cut them through the bread. You could also do them as little crostinis. You could take that portion and break that up a little bit. I've now got the ricotta cheese that we've flavored all on top of it. And now I'm going to just take these tomatoes and just spoon them on. If it falls off the bread, it's okay. And that beautiful flavor is just going to go right on top. We have the olives, the garlic, the tomatoes, the parsley, the lemon juice, the lemon zest. You'll never make a cold bruschetta again. Again, pronounced bruschetta, not bruschetta. Okay, so just got those olives there on top. Beautiful. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to just a little healthy portion of salt on top again. There's a little bit of that vinegar. Okay, so I'm just going to grab I have a spoon here. Just going to give a little splash of vinegar, not too much balsamic. I find balsamic can be a little too intense sometimes. So it's really nice to just finish off your meal or your dishes with it. Beautiful. And then for garnish, what we're going to do is I'm just going to go back very quickly. Very quickly, I'm just going to go back to that Italian parsley again. I'm just going to take a couple sprigs, couple leaves of that, and just go right over top of this with the parsley. Unreal. So good. So easy. Okay, so that's just going to go just over that like so. One last little addition. You could just go back. If you didn't zest all your lemon before, you can go back, grab your zester, grab whatever lemon's left, and just go right over top of it. Last little hit of freshness. And it's just one of my favorite things to do. If you wanted to make this a meat dish as well, you could grab some beautiful like Parma prosciutto as well with it. I'm just going to turn this all the way around here for you so you can see how I've plated that. And again, you can cut this into portions. You might want to cut it before you put all those ingredients on it, otherwise it'll make a mess. So when you've taken it off the pan, you can cut it into some smaller things. What's great is all that beautiful juice from the tomatoes and the vinegar, it's going through the layers of the ricotta cheese, through the bread. It's softening it up, which is even, like, I love that, right? Because now you can just go in with a knife and fork, scoop it up and eat it. And if I was eating bread right now, this would be gone. Okay, so that was our first dish. Like again, super simple to make. All comes down to the ingredients that we use and how we treat them on the plate and in the pan. We're gonna just give a quick little 1 minute opportunity for people to catch up and to finish. I'm gonna just kind of reset my area and we can get started on our second course. And if there's any questions while we wait, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, if you don't mind raising your hand to ask a question, we'll call on you to unmute. And we're going to send out the recording as well. So if anyone missed a part of that and they want to rewatch it, we'll be able to send that to you. But amazing so far. I'm just sitting watching you prepare this meal and I'm like salivating here.
Well, you know what? Like, we'll let everyone in on a bit of a secret, Rachel. I've cooked for you many a times. You know, you and I have you've had a chance to eat many of my, but they're usually quite meat heavy. There's usually I
think
so this is, what was that?
I think it's only been meat that I've sampled of your recipe.
That's correct. Yes, it's usually just platters of meat that I'm cooking for you at your house. So this is a nice little addition. Now, there's some of you that had a vegetarian version of this. So instead of bread, you're using Belgian Endive. So I'll use this opportunity right now just to kind of show. I love Belgian Endive. What I really love about it is it's a great two-tone lettuce. So what's great about the two-tone lettuce, also, please, by all means, eat. Don't feel the need to wait and not eat it while it's warm to move on to the next dish. Eat it now while we wait. So what's great is it's all the same steps that are along this up until this point, except for obviously the bread. So I know someone got some Belgian Endive. So what I'm going to do is take that Belgian Endive, you break it up into leaves, you keep the largest leaves as cups, the smallest leaves go into the pan. So just like how I did with the bread in the pan to soak up all that oil at the very end. So we've removed the tomatoes. You have that beautiful flavored oil in your pan. The smallest leaves of your Belgian Endive are going to go into the pan. And it's actually such a nice cooked lettuce. I actually love to grill Belgian Endive. So in the summer, I'll do a nice salad with like a gorgonzola cheese and pear and grilled radicchio and grilled endive and some slices of blood orange in there as well. Maybe throw a little bit of a grilled octopus in that, or a lightly poached shrimp in there as well, prawns. But so what you're going to do here is, like I said, take the small leaves, throw it into that flavored oil, give it a toss, let them cook down, grab the larger leaves, place them on your plate, grab your ricotta cheese, fill the cups with the ricotta cheese, then take your beautiful tomatoes, spread that around so it's now like a salad that you can pick up And then on top of your tomatoes, just put those smaller cooked leaves of the Belgian Endive right on top with a little bit of salt. And the Belgian Endive was only for people who that requested the gluten-free option. So I think there was only a couple of you that asked for no bread. You're basically like me, eating no bread right now. So yeah, so that was for those people there. Amazing. How are we doing?
I'm getting pictures
people,
of food and it looks
good. I'm assuming people right now are eating all that amazing food. Delicious. Good. I'm seeing some of these comments come through. I'm so happy to hear that. And like I said, it is so easy. And what makes this dish even better? When it's like Ontario tomato season and we're getting fresh tomatoes in. Like, it is unbelievable. I don't know where everyone joining us today lives, geography wise, but if you have a chance this summer, go to your local farmer's market. If you see beautiful baby heirloom tomatoes at that market, you grab as much as you can while they're still ripe, while they're still available, and you make this dish because it is so good. And keep in mind how, like, I've showed you a classic Putanesca sauce with not using jarred tomatoes or jarred passata, but using the fresh tomatoes the way it's meant to be done. So you can easily incorporate this into a pasta dish. If you're making salmon or cod, like a nice white fish, pouring that beautiful Putanesca tomato sauce right over top. Grilled shrimp right over top. I'm getting hungry just talking about it because I can't eat because I have to show you what's going on. But even if you have some beautiful snow crab or king crab, remove it from the shell, toss that in there as well. Like, oh, we could go on for days, literally for days, because I'm such a believer in not saying to you, this is the recipe, this is the only way it can be applied, but really just showing you the stages of a dish, and hopefully your creativity when you're going to grocery stores, when you're opening up your fridge and you're saying, what can I do tonight? Oh, look, Chef Matt, remember that weird guy wearing a hat inside? He told me tomatoes and ricotta and garlic and all these things could come together and I could make some madness happen. So you're welcome. You are welcome. Very cool. So Rachel, what do you think? You think we can move on to the next one, or are we letting people catch up now and eat?
Like, let's keep it rolling.
Cool. So if you're thinking of even like a wine pairing for that last dish, I'm a big fan of, I'm a big rosé guy. I rosé all day. You'll learn this about me, Rachel. I rosé all day. And if you were to grab a rosé from like the south of France, like the Rhone region, southern Italy, they have very tart, very dry, not sweet rosés, served chilled. I think a nice cold wine, like a Riesling Gewürztraminer blend or a nice rosé from those regions, really complements this nicely. Because when you go for a bite, you get that cold ricotta cheese, the hot blistered tomatoes, the hot bread, the cold wine. That hot cold contrast really works well together. So a little tidbit there. Okay, time to get going on this main course. So the first thing, I'm going to use a cast iron skillet for this. If you don't have a cast iron, not a problem. You could, if you have access to a barbecue, barbecues are great, obviously, but we're cooking indoors. I'm using a cast iron. You can use a stainless steel pan like I used earlier with the tomatoes. If you have a nonstick pan, that works as well. I'm also going to be using the oven for this recipe. If you don't have an oven, I'll show you a technique that kind of helps you bypass it. But ideally, you're going to want to cook this in the oven as well. So just go ahead and preheat your oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. That is 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So get that going now, because you don't want to start cooking the dish, go to put your steak in the oven and go, oh no, I forgot to set my oven. So make sure you do that. And now I'm going to let you know some of the other ingredients you're going to need for this recipe. So you're obviously going to need the steak. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this cut of beef in a little bit when we come back. It's one of my favorite cuts. I promise you, it is the best bang for buck at any butcher shop on the planet. So much so, butchers and chefs hate it when I demo this steak because it's one of the few cuts of steak that's actually still quite affordable. And we all know that demand increases price. So the more people will ask for it, the more people buy it, the more that price is going to go up, but it's just too good not to. The mushroom, someone's asking if the mushroom's going to go into the oven as well. So if you are using the portobello mushroom, which is the vegetarian iteration of the steak, I would suggest you don't need it. You could probably do the entire thing on your pan, but you know your pans better than me. If you feel like your pans don't necessarily get hot, or you don't want to create too much smoke in your kitchen, no problem. Again, we can finish the mushrooms in the oven as well. So regardless, whether you're cooking steak or you're cooking mushroom, just turn your oven on to 300 and we'll go from there. So we have your steak. You're going to need a little bit of salt. What type of cut is the steak? So I'll get into that in a second. So I'll come back to that. Don't worry. Bookmark. Rachel, bookmark me. I'm coming back to that. Okay. So right now we're just going to gather everything you need. So you're going to need, for the steak component, you need the cut of beef, obviously. I'm using a cast iron. One of the things I suggest everyone buys is a cast iron, especially if you're like in a condo, for example, and you don't have access to a barbecue. A cast iron skillet is such a great all-purpose pan, and they come in different sizes, and they really do cook food the way food's meant to be cooked, with that beautiful char. Gets a great sear on things. You're gonna need your salt. Okay, you have another lemon. Don't forget that lemon. Okay, there's some raw garlic. You're gonna need some raw garlic. Your parsley and your basil. You're gonna need both of those for this dish as well. There's a bag of yellow cornmeal. We're gonna be using that for our polenta. You're also gonna notice that it came with a box of chicken stock. You're gonna need that entire amount, but you're also gonna need about another 2 to 3 cups of water. So yes, you have the stock, but you're also going to need about 2 to 3 cups of water for this dish. What else we have here? Then there's the broccolini. Broccolini is in the broccoli family, also the rapini family. It's one of my favorite Italian side dishes. It's already been blanched. So what that means is it is cooked. So it went into a pot of boiling water while raw, but then it was taken out after about a minute and immediately thrown into an ice bath to shock it. What that does is it stops the cooking. So by blanching it, you're making it a little soft, which is what we need. It also removes some of the bitterness, specifically in rapini, but in broccolini as well. It helps reduce some of that bitterness. So that way, when we finish it off, we can just get a nice char on it, add a little garlic to it, little chili flakes, and away we go. You're also going to see a nice little, a healthy amount of butter in that container. A beautiful, healthy amount of butter. Go ahead if you have a chance, and oven is preheated to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, 300, not 350. The butter, I've actually cut it into quarters. So you've got a nice solid square. I just took a knife and just cut it very easily into 4 even pieces. What was the cut of steak called again? I will come back to that. That's the bookmark. Don't you worry. I will not forget you. The Parmesan cheese and the butter, those are all going to be used for the polenta. So we're going to come back to the polenta. We are going to start with the steak. While the steak is cooking, we are then going to make gremolata. Gremolata is a combination of the Italian parsley, the Italian basil, the raw garlic, some more lemon zest, some lemon juice, some olive oil, and some salt. I'm going to chop it all together, mix it all together, and then set that aside. Once the gremolata is done, we're going to check on our steak. The steak still isn't finished. We're going to then start our polenta. You're going to need the stock, like I said. So you have a box of stock here. You're going to need about another 2 to 3 cups of water for the polenta. You're going to need that bag of cornmeal. You're going to need your not the raw garlic. You're going to need your cream. You're going to need the Parmesan cheese container, the butter, which I've also cut into quadrants. 3 of them are going to be used for the polenta. 1 of them is for the steak. Okay. A little bit of salt, great. And then the last component, the last part of this dish is going to be the broccolini that's already been blanched. And you're going to need some chili flakes for that, maybe a little bit more garlic. Okay, so those are the 3 components of this dish, or 4 components of this dish. I've kind of outlined what you need. Now to the steak. So a few people have now asked me, Matt, please, what is this cut of meat that you keep talking about and won't give us details on? Well, let me explain. It is referred to as the picanha steak, often used in Brazilian or Argentinian cooking. You've probably seen it, but in those photos where it's folded like this with a skewer going through it and cooked over fire. Really though, that's what chefs refer to it as a picanha. But if you were to go to a butcher shop, they would probably wouldn't have that in the counter. But really what it is that it's a sirloin cap. So your sirloin is a big chunk of meat, oven to 300, yes. So again, if we could just put out a note so everyone knows that the oven is set to 300 degrees Fahrenheit, 300. Okay, back to the steak. So you have this big, beautiful sirloin beef. On top of that roast, there's a cap of meat. And I'm actually not a big fan of sirloin at all. Strip loin is great, tenderloin is great. Sirloin, I find, can be a little chewy, a little dry, lacks a little bit of flavor, but the cap that sits on top of the sirloin is beautiful. It comes right off. You leave that beautiful fat cap on, which is what this side is. You clean up the bottom and you cut it into steaks, and you really only get about 4 or 5 picanha steaks out of a whole sirloin cap. And because of its weird and awkward shape, it comes out at different sizes. So I'm going to give you a rough estimate on your cook time, but unfortunately, because everyone's steak is slightly different in shape and size, they're all about 10 to 12 ounces, but because of how awkward the piece of meat is, some of them might be cut thicker and look smaller. Some of them might be cut thinner and look longer because of where it was cut on the cap. So generally speaking, I'll give you a guideline. I'll base it on what I have. I think for the most part, they all look like this. I saw a few go out today and they all looked very similar. So I will give you a rough estimate. And also, so you know too, I cook my steak to medium rare. So I will be cooking it today to medium rare. If you prefer your steak cooked more than that, I will not judge, but I will give you pointers as to how much further to go. If you like your steak rare, I will have to suggest and advise against it on this cut of meat in particular. Some cuts of meat, like a beef tenderloin, will melt in your mouth at rare, and I usually love a good rare steak. However, the picanha steak, even ribeye to a certain degree, can get a little chewy if they're not cooked to at least medium rare. So an internal temperature of about 135, which is why I was saying earlier when we were talking about gadgets, one of my sirloin cap. So to the gentleman who just asked, beef cap, beef is the whole animal. It is the sirloin cap. Awesome. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, so when I was saying earlier, some of my favorite gadgets is a digital meat thermometer. It allows you to take an internal temperature of what you're cooking, so it removes the guessing from what you're cooking in front of you. It is, which is so important, right? Because in a situation like this, where it's like, someone will tell you, oh, medium rare, 3 minutes aside. Well, it's like, well, how thick was it? How much does it weigh? Like that, all that stuff matters. The weight doesn't lie of the steak, so you need to know what your internal and the internal temperature of the steak of the steak doesn't lie either. So it's ready, not based on the way it looks, but based on what that internal temperature is. Okay, now that I am starving talking about the steak for the last 10, 15 minutes, we can now get started on the actual cooking side of things. So I'm going to be using a cast iron skillet. I'm going to just move this camera a little bit closer just so you can kind of see what's going on. A little bit better on my cast iron. How's that? That looks pretty good, huh? Okay, so this is my cast iron skillet right here. You're going to want to turn that on a high temperature, okay? It is so important when you're searing any sort of steak, making burgers or whatever in a cast iron skillet, you need to get heat into the skillet. I quite often cook on cast irons, even on my barbecue. And the same thing applies when you are bringing the temperature, because cast iron will retain heat very, very well, but you have to get that heat in there. So you have to get it on a nice high heat temperature. While that's happening, we're going to do a couple things. You're going to take your steak, and you'll see on the back side of your steak a piece of fat. Keep that fat. That is your fat cap. You want to keep that. Take a knife. I'll do this. And you're going to score the fat cap. And what this does is it allows the heat from the cast iron to penetrate through the fat cap, so that way the fat cap, when you're cooking into it, isn't gelatinous. So I went on an angle in one direction, and now I'm just going to turn it just ever so slightly, and I'm going to make the exact same pattern in the other direction. And it's basically like making a diamond cut into the fat of the meat. Bless you. It's like putting a little diamond cut into that fat there. And like, you don't want to cut too far deep. You don't want to break into the meat. You just want to cut through the fat, so that way when we do render the fat, which is a very important step, when we render the fat, that heat is cooking through that fat. All that beautiful fat is rendering into your pan. It's adding flavor, because please remember that when you're talking about steak, fat is your friend. It is flavor. There's a huge difference between fat and gristle when you're talking about steaks. Gristle is clear, and it's usually a big line running through your steak. That will never cook out, no matter how long you cook your steak for. Whether it's rare or well done, you cut into it, you bite into gristle, it's still there, it's super chewy, but fat will cook into the meat. Someone just asked if I bring my steak to room temperature. Great question. I have brought the steak to room temperature. However, I have tested recipes with cold steaks, and I've tested recipes with room temperature steaks, and it makes no difference. In fact, I actually got a better sear from a cold steak, because it went from cold steak to hot pan. It created a better reaction on the meat, and it gave me a better sear. But anyone that says you have to do one or the other, they're lying to you. I've got a little bit of smoke coming off my pan now. That's when I know we're good to go. I've got a little bit of olive oil here, olive oil in the pan. I've only used half of this bottle. So between the tomatoes and now the steak, I've only used half of this bottle. Now we're going to go ahead and just season the steak. You really just need two things to season your steak: salt and black pepper. And I don't even really like black pepper that much. If you smoke cigarettes, or if you used to smoke cigarettes, you tend to over pepper things, because there's something about cigarette smoke that like ruins your taste buds for black pepper. I'm not a huge fan of black pepper, so I'm just going to go ahead and just season it with steak. Season it all the way around. Season the top, the bottom, the side, the fat cap. And we are going to place the steak right into the cast iron. You got to hear that sound. If you do not hear that sound, you did not let your pan get hot enough. It is so important to get that sear on your steak. The salt will help do that, making sure that your steak is nice and dry. So someone asked earlier about being at room temperature. That doesn't matter as much, but it can't be super wet. So, someone said, what did I coat the steak in? I just use salt. Salt and pepper is fine too, but I just use salt, because I'm not a big fan of black pepper. Sometimes I'll go back over with black pepper after the fact, once it's been cooked and sliced and more of a topper, but I'm not a fan of cooking with black pepper. That is a personal thing. I will not judge you if you go to town with some black pepper. So now you notice the steak is in the pan and I'm not touching it. Again, a huge, crucial step to cooking a good steak, especially especially on the barbecue. Like I'll see people cooking steaks and they put it on and they're moving it and they've flipped it 19 times and they're like finding it. The more you move it, the more you will dry it out. You need the steak and the pan. You need to have faith and trust in your steak and in your pan. So in order to do that, you gotta let it just do its thing, and it's now gonna cook. It's gonna sear. So we're not even really cooking it. We're just getting a nice color and caramelization on that meat. We're gonna let it do its thing for about 2 to 3 minutes. Someone just asked me fat up or fat down. Fat's on the side. So we put a flat side of the steak down first. Fat's on the side. I'm like doing signs here. We got fat on the side here. The cap is on the side. So we put the flat end of the steak down first, about 2 minutes, and then we're gonna flip. So now I'm gonna give that a nice flip, and already I can see a beautiful crust forming on the steak. And that's so important. Again, without that crust, you're really not getting that steakhouse quality cook, which, to my opinion, is what makes a steak really shine over everything. If you just cook it to the point where, you know, it's gray, you're not getting that beautiful char. Now, someone just asked if you're doing the vegetarian option, what can you do? So same idea. You're gonna get a little bit of oil in the pan as well. Get a little oil on the mushrooms. I would even suggest that you use some balsamic vinegar and kind of coat your mushrooms in some balsamic vinegar. Get some flavor in those mushrooms. Again, give them a sear on both sides, a little salt and pepper in the oven at 300. And then I'll get you to chop some garlic and add the chopped garlic to the portobello mushrooms when they come out. We're gonna melt some butter, you're gonna throw some garlic in there, and you're just gonna baste it. Now the mushrooms will not cook for nearly as long as the steak. So, you know, basically you're searing for about 2 minutes aside on the mushroom, and then you're cooking it for about 6 minutes in the oven. Okay, back to the steak. We've got a good little sear going on both sides. Now this is, I'm just gonna get, it's almost there. Like I said, I want a nice crust to form on both sides there. My oven is at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So the pan, that's why I love using cast iron, because it can go from stove to oven in one motion. If not the cast iron and you're using a stainless steel, same idea. I'm a big fan of oven safe pans. That way you're not transferring from oven to baking sheet to there. If you are using a baking sheet, all good. You might want to use a bit of a riser, those grill pans. That way your meat isn't just sitting flat on the baking sheet. It's now elevated and sitting above. So if you're using a different kind of pan that doesn't go in your oven, or you know that your pan doesn't cook well in the oven, no problem. Use a baking sheet, but grab a little grill pan that elevates. So now that I've seared the steak on both sides, this is a crucial step. Take your tongs, take your steak, and turn it fat side right into the oil, okay? This is called rendering the fat. I wish it was this easy for me to go to the gym and render some of the fat from all the bread, like, you know, just turn it on its side. But this is how we cook some of that fat down, and you'll notice that it starts to like almost look restricted. Like the fat will tighten up on you, okay? Because that means you are reducing that fat in a beautiful way. You want to cook that all out. Amazing. Now, even though there's only one side that has a fat cap, make sure you give the other side of your steak a little bit of love too. We've seared it on all sides. The odor, the smell is like, it's so good. And all we've done is added hot beef to a hot pan with a little bit of oil and salt. So again, using great ingredients, some nice Canadian beef. Okay, so now that I've seared it on all my sides, including rendering off the fat, if you're using a cast iron or a stainless steel pan, chances are your handle is super hot. So grab an oven safe rag or an oven mitt. I don't really use oven mitts, but that's gonna go right into the oven. Now the reason why that's gonna cook for about 8 minutes, okay? Give or take about 8 minutes. Might need a little bit longer based on the thickness, but at 8 minutes, I'm gonna pull it out and I'm gonna probe it and then let it rest. It's so important to let your steak rest, especially if you're gonna be serving it sliced. Okay, so now you're gonna grab a saucepan of some sort of deep pan. You're gonna add your stock and your water to your pan. And you're gonna bring it to a boil. So I've got my chicken stock here and my water all going in the same pan. So the water and the chicken stock all going in the same pan. I'm gonna turn it on. I'm gonna let that come to a boil. So now while I'm waiting for the stock and the water to boil, we're gonna start to make our gremolata. So you're gonna grab a bowl, okay, and you're gonna grab, how much stock do we use? Use the entire carton. So it should be about 1 liter of stock and about 2 to 3 cups of water. 2 to 3 cups of water. So 2 to 3 cups of water and the entire container of stock. So I'm using about a handful of fresh parsley. The steak has gone in the oven and we're gonna set a timer. Rachel, let's set a timer for 8 minutes, okay? It's 8-minute shot clock.
You got it.
Fresh basil, awesome, thank you.
Does the mushroom go in the oven as well?
The mushrooms go in the oven as well. Now the mushrooms only need about 6 minutes tops.
Okay, we got a 6 minute and an 8-minute timer. Good.
Amazing. So now I've used the entire container of chicken stock and I grabbed about 2 to 3 cups of water. I've combined it into a pot together, so the stock and the water together. I'm gonna wanna bring that to a boil, okay? Now I'm gonna make my gremolata. So you're gonna grab your parsley and your basil. Grab about a handful of each. This part is totally on you. It's a little bit more liberal, okay? I'm gonna grab my knife again. You're gonna grab a bowl as well. Grab my knife. I'm just gonna give this a nice chop. Just combine them. They don't have to be separated. I wanna give it a nice chop. Now, you can use a Vitamix or a hand immersion blender to make your gremolata. It almost makes it more like a pesto sauce. I want it to be more of an oil. So it's meant to finish the steak off. It's also great on oysters. It's great on baked clams. Really nice on seafood. So you can use it. And yes, you're going to use both. You're going to use both the Italian parsley and the Italian. Yeah, you can use equal parts parsley and basil. Again, I just used about a handful of each. If you don't, like basil as much, you can use all parsley. You can use all basil. That part makes no difference. If you need a quantity, you're looking at about a half cup of each, but not chopped half cup, like full leaf half cup. Some people will say, "Oh, take the leaves off the stems, throw out the stems." Again, my nonna in a quarter. For why you throw out the stems? There's so much flavor in those stems. Nothing's gonna go wrong. You're not gonna get sick if you eat the stems. There's actually more flavor, especially in basil, fresh basil, in the stem than there is in the leaf. Keep them. Just break it down. Use your knife. Chop it. But do not throw it out. Or if you aren't going to use it, hold on to it. And next time you decide you want to make stock or something like chicken, like just throw it into a stock pot and grab some of that flavor off the stems. Okay, so now you can see here on camera 2, I've chopped up my basil and my Italian parsley. I'm just going to add it to a bowl. Beautiful. Great. Now I'm going to take all of my raw garlic. Now, if I'm cooking portobello mushrooms, maybe save about 1 or 2 cloves. Chop it all, but don't use it all for the gremolata. Save some for the portobello as well. But if you are cooking the steak, let's use it all this garlic that's left over for the gremolata. So I've smashed all the garlic, and then again, I'm just gonna go in with my knife and give it a nice chop. So at one end, use your fingers to guide you. You want there to be a nice fine chop. So the easiest thing to do is give it one chop, come back around, and give it another chop. I'm gonna show you another trick too. So take your chopped garlic, form in a little bit of a pile, take some of your olive oil, and drizzle a little bit of your olive oil on top of your garlic. Right on top of your garlic, okay? On your cutting board, obviously, not on your table. Now go back to your knife, move it around, get that garlic in the oil, and chop it into the oil. And what this will do is make it more of a paste. And it'll soak up all that oil. And you can even grab some salt and salt that as well. So salt right into the garlic. Bring it all together. Get the garlic off your knife and chop right into that. That garlic will pick up that oil. It'll pick up that salt. It'll also pick up any of that residual basil or parsley that you have on your cutting board. So it's like multifaceted at this point. All right, so to allow you, by doing this, it allows you to break it down a little easier without just being chunks of raw garlic in your gremolata. Okay, so now I'm going to take my garlic. I'm going to add it to that same bowl that the parsley and the basil is in. Okay. Now I'm going to go back. Remember earlier we had a lemon that we only used one. So I'm going to juice that second lemon right into that same bowl. Beautiful. And then there's that third lemon now, where you can go ahead and zest that third lemon into that bowl. Get some of that beautiful lemon zest in there. So gremolata is such a great everything kind of, it's not really a sauce. It's more of a, it's a hybrid between a sauce, a dressing, a marinade. It's great for so many applications in Italian cooking. You could even take that gremolata and drizzle it over your blistered tomato toast from before. Okay, so now we have the lemon in there. I'm going to take some olive oil, and I'm just going to add olive oil now to this bowl. Grab a spoon or a fork, give it a stir. You want it to kind of become a nice, thick paste. So I've only got about a splash of olive oil left. I'm just going to use it all now at this point. If you find it's too loose, go back and just chop up a little bit more basil. But you can see here, it's a nice, loose, kind of olive oil-based marinade. The amount of zest is up to you, exactly.
6-minute timer has gone off.
6 minutes. Okay, so if you're cooking portobello mushrooms, remove them from the oven. Take those 2 extra cloves of chopped garlic that I asked you to put aside. And then remember earlier, I asked you to take your chunk of butter and to cut it into 4 pieces. Take one of those chunks of butter, okay? Take your pan safely of portobello mushrooms out. Throw that, not on heat. So your pan's hot. You don't need to add it heat. Take that knob of butter, throw it into your pan, add your garlic to that pan, and now baste your mushrooms in that garlic and that butter. And just keep basting until all that butter is nice and melted. Okay, so this is our gremolata. It's good. I'm just going to go back, add a little bit more salt to it. And we are going to drizzle this over our entire dish. The gremolata is now done. So I'm just going to move that off to the side. Okay. And we're just going to check up on how's everyone's stock doing? You want to make sure that it's come to a boil. So if your stock hasn't come to a boil, you're not ready yet to make the polenta. But we might as well get the ingredients that we need to make the polenta ready. So you're going to need your bowl, your cornmeal. I've already transferred to a bowl. Now, believe it or not, you're probably looking at how much liquid's in the pan and how much cornmeal's in the bowl or bag, and you're being like, there's not enough cornmeal for that liquid. Trust me when I say it expands and it absorbs and it sucks up all of that. 8-minute timer just went off. Perfect. Thank you very much. Pause on that thought on the polenta because it's important. All right, so I'm going to grab the pan with a nice safe oven pan. So that's 8-minute cook at 300 after searing. It's got a beautiful kind of crust on it. I'm just going to grab my digital meat thermometer, but if you don't have one, it's okay because we'll just base it off of mine. Because they're all kind of the same. So my internal temperature right now is reading at 125, which is actually pretty good. We want about 130. So what's great is in the resting state, I'm actually not going to put my steak back in for longer than 8 minutes. In the resting stage, it will keep cooking. But you might want to go, the stock is unsalted. Yes, don't worry. We'll come back to the stock. So we're on this steak right now. It's cooked for 8 minutes. It's in that beautiful hot pan. Grab that one of the 4 knobs of butter. Add it to your pan, okay? Allow that to melt and just start basting your steak with that butter, okay? Because it needs to rest. Your steak needs to rest. But first allow that butter to melt and just baste your steak in butter. I'm even gonna just leave the knob on top, let it melt and run down the steak. Now again, this is for a medium rare cook. If you want to keep going, I'm not going to stop you. Okay, so if you like your steak cooked a little bit more, no problem. Cook it to about 10 or 11 minutes. I would not go past 12, unless of course you like your steak well done. So I'm just covering it with that butter now. Amazing. So I'm just going to let it rest. You can let it rest in the pan, but keep in mind your pan is still hot. So that means it's still cooking it on the bottom. So if you don't want it to continue to cook too much, yes, it'll raise up about 5 degrees here and there, but I'm going to take my pan. I've still got that nub at my steak. It's got a knob of butter just sitting on it, okay? While it's resting, it's got that beautiful butter on top. I'm just going to put it on a pan off to the side and allow it to rest, okay? And then I'll just keep going back and adding more butter to it if it starts to melt and fall off. The stock is unsalted, okay? It's unsalted. We will salt the polenta. And like I said, you're probably looking at it and saying there's a lot of cornmeal. Sorry, not a lot of cornmeal for a lot of liquid there. Trust me when I say it will absorb all of that. So you need the polenta. You need the Parmesan cheese. You need that heavy cream. And a little bit more salt, okay? One last thing we're gonna do too, I almost forgot about it, is that pan with all those beautiful steak juices, turn it on, get it hot, which actually should be hot right now, so get it on a burner, okay? Don't clean the pan. Keep the pan exactly as is. Grab your broccolini and throw your broccolini right in that pan, okay? And remember, it's already cooked. So what this is doing is it's picking up all that beautiful steak flavor, plus that cast iron skillet will give it a nice little bit of char. I'm gonna take some chili flakes because I love chili flakes. I'm still waiting for my stock is almost boiling. I have a lid here. I'm just gonna throw a lid on my stock really quickly just to speed that up a bit. So I'm throwing my chili flakes on my broccolini right now. I'm gonna give that a nice little pinch of salt as well. So as you can see, my broccolini is in that same pan that I cooked the steak in. Give it a toss. Give it a quick toss. It doesn't need a long cook. This is literally to pick up all that beautiful steak flavor. I threw the chili flakes in mine. Once you feel like your broccolini has picked up that butter and steak awesomeness, you can then turn off your pan and just leave the broccolini in the pan. If you're doing the portobello mushrooms, same idea. So you've basted your mushrooms in that garlic and butter, remove the mushrooms, set them aside, throw your broccolini in that pan. And we're just waiting on the stock to boil. So back to the ingredients we need for the rapini. I have my cornmeal. I have my grated Parmesan cheese. I have my cream. And then I have those other 3 knobs of butter. Okay, so we have 3 of those 4 knobs of butter left. Amazing. We have a little bit of salt. And that's pretty much all you need. The water and the stock have already been combined into that pot. It's coming to a nice boil right now, which is great. Okay, so I've turned off my pan that has the broccolini. So that's just gonna it's got a nice little char on it right now. I'm very excited about that. Broccolini is one of my favorite things. I'll make it and I'll leave it in the fridge. I'll throw it on sandwiches all the time. So now that my stock is has come to a boil, grab a whisk. I had a whisk. Here's my whisk. Okay, grab a whisk, grab your cornmeal, and add your cornmeal. And as you're adding your cornmeal, whisk at the same time. A little bit at a time. And just keep going, keep adding. And look at that. Remember I was telling you earlier, like, oh man, I don't know if there's a lot of liquid there. Trust me, it needs it. Cornmeal needs it. Plus you want it to be nice and creamy, the polenta. We've got all that cornmeal added to that stock. Beautiful. Again, go in there with a whisk. Whisk, whisk, whisk. Whisk, whisk, whisk. Beautiful. Grab that Parmigiano cheese. Okay. Now once it's been fully incorporated, turn down the heat. Okay, because then it's just gonna be bubbling everywhere. Parmigiano right into the polenta. Okay, so now we've added into that boiling stock and water combination, we've added all of our cornmeal, we've added our Parmesan cheese, and I've lowered the heat. So now it's nice and cheesy. Okay, and just give that a whisk. You want to make sure that all that beautiful cheese is melted. Then you're going to take all that cream, add all your cream to that. This is very light. And you're going to take all that butter, and all that butter is going to go in there too. So now we've added the cream, the butter, the Parmigiano, the cornmeal, all in that stock. And you're just going to keep whisking it until all that butter has melted. I'm even a fan, like when my nonna used to make polenta for me, she would serve it with like a ragu, so like a slow cooked meat. The sauce would go over top of it, and then she would just throw an egg yolk right on the top. And the heat from the polenta would almost cook the yolk. You break the yolk into it, you mix it together. It's beautiful. But now we have nice, beautiful, creamy polenta. This is probably more polenta than you need, but it's really hard to make polenta in small batches. It's one of those things you have to make it in larger batches. So you can now take the polenta off the heat. It's beautiful and creamy. Grab some salt. Don't be shy. It needs that salt. So I'm going to add about 4 dashes with my hands. If you're wondering what a dash is, you're looking at about a half teaspoon. So I added probably about 2 teaspoons of salt to that. This is how I cook at home, right? So I'm always like, grab this, grab that. Roy Choi, one of my favorite chefs, someone who I really do admire a lot. He just had a master class out, and he summed it up exactly like how I would. He goes, why do you need measuring cups? 1 cup, 2 cup. Those are your cups right there. Okay, so now I've got the polenta off the heat. I'm just gonna go a little bit more salt. Give it a quick taste. Oh, so creamy. Could probably even still use a little bit more salt, just a little bit. Okay, now it's time to put this meal together. So I have a nice, beautiful board that I'm going to display it on. Okay, any plate will do. You don't have to be fancy. My steak. Where is my steak? Here it is. My steak is resting. It has been resting. I'm now going to place, I also have a little bit of that butter left from my steak. That's going in there. All the juice from the resting steak, that's going into my polenta as well. I'm just going to incorporate that all in there. Mix it all around. You don't have to do that step, but why not? That's flavor. Okay, so now the steak, I'm going to place it on the cutting board. You should always let your steak rest for about 5 to 10 minutes. There's someone with a hand up. Is that a question, Rachel? I see someone with a hand up.
I'm not sure. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have your hand up. The name is iPhone.
Hi, this
Hi,
is
iPhone.
Tamana.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, this is Tamana. I just had a question for the polenta. How much of the cream did you use? I missed it.
I used all the cream.
So the more
All
the
the
merrier. Okay.
More
okay,
cream,
awesome.
the merrier. You saw how quick, like, remember when I was saying, like, you're going to look at that bowl of cornmeal and all that
Yeah,
stock and be like, there's not enough cornmeal. Trust me, it absorbs it really
it was
quickly.
magic.
Magic, right? So
Yeah.
now you need to add liquid and fat. That's what's going to
Okay.
bring out that flavor.
Okay, so I
Cream,
can add more
butter,
butter if I want.
Parmesan cheese. Yeah. It's not going
Sounds
to
good.
ruin it. It'll only make it taste better.
Awesome. Also for the steak, we
Yep.
cooked it in the fry pan, but we're making 4 portions.
Okay.
We like it a little bit more well cooked. We put it in an oven at 300. Should we be basting it with butter every couple minutes, like taking it out?
No.
or-
Let it cook. No. Because if every time you take it out, you're letting the heat out of the oven.
Okay.
Let it cook. Baste it at the end, like I did. No different.
Okay.
You're just
Got it.
waiting at a
And
later point.
At,
So cook
at
for like
300 at
Yeah.
300 for medium
You're looking
well.
at
How
about-
long should we be
You're
there?
looking at about 12 to 15 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
You're
By the way,
welcome.
we love the Putanesca. I'm like, I can
Right?
just live off of that. Thank you.
Thank you, iPhone.
Thank you. Bye. Tamana
Bye.
and Tarek here, actually. Thank you
Tamana,
so
I'm
much.
kidding. I'm kidding. Enjoy.
No worries. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Okay, time to cut into this steak. Like I said, I like my steak medium rare. Nice thin cuts. Oh yeah. Like, I don't know if you can see that. There it is. Like, it's cooked perfectly. So we pulled it out. If you're trying to catch up, we pulled it out at an internal temperature of 125. We let it rest for about 10 minutes. We basted it with more butter. Oh, it's cooked, as far as I'm concerned, to perfection. You want to make sure that those slices are on the thinner side. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Beautiful. Gotta taste it, make sure it's right. Okay, time to build the plate. Probably should have done that. Now I'm talking. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, polenta should be served on wood. That's just a historical thing. Should always be eating polenta off of wood. If you don't have wood, fine, use a plate. I'm gonna grab a spoon, and throw this polenta right on my board here. Don't be shy. And then I'm gonna give it a nice dollop. A dollop and a swipe. Okay. So nice dollop and a swipe right on there. Like I said, there's enough polenta there to invite the neighbors over. I'm just gonna move my cutting board like this. I'm just gonna push that back just a little bit so you can see. Okay, beautiful. And I've got my little knife here. Okay, so now I'm gonna take my steak that I've beautifully sliced, that beautiful medium rare steak, just gonna lay it out like such. Grab your rapini, your broccolini, sorry, the chili and the butter. It's got that nice char on it. That's gonna go right over top of your polenta, like so. Okay, you can eat it just like that. Now, if you had the portobello mushrooms, I would cut your portobello mushrooms in half, or you can slice it and you can place it over. The 3 other butter cubes, that goes into polenta. The cream, the butter, the Parmesan cheese, all into your polenta, and whisk it until it all melts. Now I'm gonna take my steak and just place it over top of the broccolini, just like so. So you can see that, I've got the broccolini and the steak, okay? Then I'm gonna grab my beautiful Gremolata. Okay, give it a good mix. Get all those beautiful flavors together and just staggering over top. You don't want to dominate. You want to make sure you still taste the steak, but you want to get it a little bit on the polenta, a little bit on the steak, a little bit on the rapini, all over. A little bit of that Gremolata over the whole dish. Go back, finish it with a little extra salt over the top. And that, my friends, is a home run. So simple. And you serve that for someone, they come over, they'll think you were working under me at a restaurant. How are we doing for time, Rachel?